As the Count leaned over me and his hands touched me, I could not repress a shudder. It may have been that his breath was rank, but a horrible feeling of nausea came over me. Hello everyone, my name is Jimena. A few days ago was World Dracula Day, which I didn't know existed until I started seeing it on Twitter. So I thought to celebrate, a few days late, I would do a dramatic reading of the moment when we first encountered Dracula in the novel. I'm also going to leave a link in the description to my video about how Dracula represents mental illness, especially how it was viewed in the Victorian era. But this book is so full of stuff to talk about. So I thought that as I was doing the dramatic reading, I might occasionally pause and give a little context or some fun facts and stuff like that. Anyway, so I'm reading from the Norton Critical Edition, starting near the beginning of chapter 2, page 21 in my edition. So Jonathan is a solicitor, which basically is a lawyer, and he's coming to the castle of Count Dracula, who is his sort of superior's client, and he's going to help him with some legal matters or something. So he's just been dropped off by this carriage that has taken him through this wild journey where there are wolves and stuff howling outside, and he's waiting right outside the door. I heard a heavy step approaching behind the great door, and saw through the chinks the gleam of a coming light. Then there was the sound of rattling chains and the clanking of massive bolts drawn back. A key was turned with the loud grating noise of long disuse, and the great door swung back. Within stood a tall old man, clean-shaven save for a long white mustache, and clad in black from head to foot, without a single speck of color about him anywhere. He held in his hand an antique silver lamp, in which the flame burned without chimney or globe of any kind, throwing long, quivering shadows as it flickered in the draught of the open door. The old man motioned me in with his right hand, with a courtly gesture, saying in excellent English, but with a strange intonation, "Welcome to my house. Enter freely of your own will." Notice here that Dracula is asking Jonathan in, the way that we often in pop culture portray vampires as needing to be invited in. Vampires in Dracula ask for consent all the time. It's often coerced consent, but they ask for consent always because they need it. As supernatural creatures, they're limited by that. It's also another way to victim blame, which is fun. He made no motion of stepping to meet me, but stood like a statue, as though his gesture of welcome had fixed him into stone. The instant, however, that I had stepped over the threshold, he moved impulsively forward, and holding out his hand, grasped mine with a strength which made me wince, an effect which was not lessened by the fact that it seemed cold as ice, more like the hand of a dead than a living man. Again he said, "Welcome to my house. Come freely. Go safely, and leave something of the happiness you bring." The strength of the handshake was so much akin to that which I had noticed in the driver of the carriage, whose face I had not seen, that for a moment I doubted if it were not the same person to whom I was speaking. So to make sure, I said interrogatively, "Count Dracula?" He bowed in a courtly way as he replied, "I am Dracula. I bid you welcome, Mr. Harker, to my house. Come in, the night air is chill, and you must need to eat and rest." As he was speaking, he put the lamp on a bracket on the wall, and stepping out, took my luggage. He had carried it in before I could forestall him. I protested, but he insisted, "Nay, sir, you are my guest. It is late, and my people are not available. Let me see to your comfort myself." Notice here that Dracula is being very domestic and subservient. He is carrying out the actions that would usually be undertaken by a servant, which in Victorian times would not be seen as a virtue of, like, this guy is so welcoming. It would be seen as a flaw in his character, because he is supposed to be a nobleman who is, like, above this sort of thing, but he is not. He's, like, he's being the servant. So this would be an indication of his moral failing within his class. He insisted on carrying my traps, luggage, along the passage, and then up a great winding stair, and along another great passage, on whose stone floor our steps rang heavily. At the end of this he threw open a heavy door, and I rejoiced to see within a well-lit room in which a table was spread for supper, and on whose mighty hearth a great fire of logs flamed and flared. The Count halted, putting down my bags, and closed the door, and crossing the room, opened another door, which led into a small octagonal room lit by a single lamp, and seemingly without a window of any sort. Passing through this, he opened another door, and motioned me to enter. It was a welcome sight, for here was a great bedroom, well lighted and warmed with another log fire, which sent a hollow roar up the wide chimney. The Count himself left my luggage inside, and withdrew, saying before he closed the door, "You will need after your journey to refresh yourself by making your toilet." Cleaning himself up, not like building a toilet. "I trust you will find all that you wish. When you are ready to come into the other room, where you will find your supper prepared." The light and warmth and the Count's courteous welcome seemed to have dissipated all my doubts and fears. Having then reached my normal state, I discovered that I was half famished with hunger, so making a hasty toilet, I went into the other room. I found supper already laid out. My host, who stood on one side of the great fireplace, leaning against the stonework, made a graceful wave of his hand to the table, and said, "I pray you, be seated, and sup how you please. You will, I trust, excuse me that I do not join you, but I have dined already, and do not sup." There's a note here in the Norton edition that says, 19th century gentlefolk dined lavishly at midday and supped lightly in the evening. Dracula's abstinence may contain a delicate double meaning, but he does not intone the ironic refusal, "I never drink wine," a line made famous by Bela Lugosi's arch reading in Todd Browning's 1931 film. Interesting tidbit for you there. I handed to him the sealed letter which Mr. Hawkins had entrusted to me. I'm going to skip the part about the legal boring stuff. By the time I had finished my supper, and by my host's desire had drawn up a chair by the fire, and began to smoke a cigar, which he offered me, at the same time excusing himself that he did not smoke. I had now an opportunity of observing him, and found him of a very marked physiognomy, Victorians put a lot of stock in, like, the shape of a face as a way of understanding their personality and their, like, character. And so, like, they had all these, like, pseudoscientific, like, head measurements and facial stuff that was supposed to tell you something about the personality type. Sort of like a Myers-Briggs test where someone just came into your house and measured your head instead of answering some questions. His face was a very strong, aquiline, with a high bridge of the thin nose and peculiarly arched nostrils, with a lofty domed forehead and hair growing scantily around the temples, but profusely elsewhere. His eyebrows were very massive, almost meeting over the nose, and with bushy hair that seemed to curl in its own profusion. The mouth, so far as I could see it, under the heavy moustache, was fixed and rather cruel-looking, with peculiarly sharp white teeth. These protruded over the lips, whose remarkable ruddiness showed astonishing vitality in a man of his years. For the rest, his ears were pale, and at the tops extremely pointed. The chin was broad and strong, and the cheeks firm, though thin. The general effect was one of extraordinary pallor. Hitherto I had noticed the backs of his hands as they lay on his knees in the firelight, and they had seemed rather white and fine. But seeing them now close to me, I could not but notice that they were rather coarse, broad, with squat fingers. Strange to say, there were hairs in the center of the palm. Another interesting note from the Norton Critical Edition: film adaptations avoid Dracula's hairiness. Different as they are from each other, most cinematic Draculas are clean-shaven and, in all senses of the word, smooth. These hairy palms are one of Dracula's few affinities with the werewolf, and, in the opinion of some commentators, with the Victorian masturbator as well. Apparently it was like an urban legend that if you masturbated a lot, it made your palms hairy. The nails were long and fine, and cut to a sharp point. As the Count leaned over me, and his hands touched me, I could not repress a shudder. It may have been that his breath was rank, but a horrible feeling of nausea came over me, which, do what I would, I could not conceal. The Count, evidently noticing it, drew back, and with a grim sort of smile, which showed more than he had yet done, his protuberant teeth, sat himself down again on his own side of the fireplace. We were both silent for a while, and as I looked towards the window, I saw the first dim streak of the coming dawn. There seemed a strange stillness over everything, but as I listened, I heard, as if from down below in the valley, the howling of many wolves. The Count's eyes gleamed, and he said, "Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make!" Seeing, I suppose, some expression in my face strange to him, he added, "Ah, sir, you dwellers in the city cannot enter into the feelings of the hunter." Interesting note here, Dracula in a lot of ways is like representing a regression from the civilized Victorian sort of Industrial Revolution era middle class and general population. He's like more primitive, he's a hunter, he like hunts his own food rather than having it mass produced or anything. So this is an early hint about what kind of fears that he represents, the fear of the primitive and all that kind of stuff. Then he rose and said, "But you must be tired. Your bedroom is all ready, and tomorrow you shall sleep as late as you will. I have to be away until the afternoon, so sleep well and dream well." And with a courteous bow, he opened for me himself the door to the octagonal room, and I entered my bedroom. I am all in a sea of wonders. I doubt, I fear, I think strange things which I dare not confess to my own soul. God keep me, if only for the sake of those dear to me. Yeah, Jonathan is a drama queen. So, that is the first meeting between Jonathan and Dracula, which is the first time that the reader sees Dracula. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed reading it a lot. Let me know in the comments if you would like me to do more of these dramatic readings, or what other kind of videos you would like to see from me. Let me know if you've read Dracula, what you've thought of it, and if you liked this video, please like and subscribe. I post new videos every Wednesday, except I've been kind of like, I've not been great about that. Today's Thursday, in case you haven't noticed, and last week I skipped. Anyway, I try to post new videos every Wednesday. I'll see you next week.